Now this is another Boolean algebra, but it's slightly more unusual, this one, because they've essentially given you what the answer is, and they've asked you to prove that that's the case. So we have to then look at this side and decide whether we can get to this answer. So the first obvious thing we could do to reduce this is to look at D or not D. And D or not D is going to be 1. And if you're not sure about that, you can always either draw yourself a little circuit or a little truth table and think about that. Because if we've got D and then we've got not D there, then if D is 1, not D will be 0, and the output will be 1 because an OR gate only needs one of the inputs to be 1. If D is 0, then not D has to be 1, so therefore the output's always going to be 1. So we end up with A plus B and B or C and 1. So then we could again look at an identity. So B or C and 1. It's the same as saying X or 1, X and 1 rather, which is X, because again, if we've got an AND gate and we've got a 1 permanently on this side, then the output's only dependent on what comes in here. So that means we can reduce this to B or C. So we've got A or B and B or C. So we could factorize then. So we're identifying like terms. So we've got a like term there, and we could then take the B outside of the brackets and we get B or A and C. So A and C are other terms. So B or A and C, so that's the same really as this. We could rearrange it, and we could rearrange that to A and C or B, because the brackets in this case are irrelevant because it and takes precedence anyway. So A or C and B, and that's the answer that we need to come up with. There are some other ways of doing it. You could expand these brackets by timesing them together and then reduce it from there, but it seems to me that this is probably the most straightforward way of doing this one, by identifying this common term here, that B is in both sides, and taking it outside of the brackets. It makes it much easier to reduce than to multiply out the brackets in this case. So we've got that one right. So when you're doing this kind of thing in the exam, there is nothing to stop you from drawing your little pictures if you want to on the side, or for doing a little truth table as you're going along, just to make sure that you've got the right identities. So the most common mistake in the actual exam for this was the first one, was this. So lots of people decided that D or not D was D, and it's not. So they made a mistake. And if you make a mistake on these, the first mistake you make, that's when the marking stops. So lots of people didn't get any marks by making that first mistake. So just take your time on them and make sure that you're happy with the identities, and you should be absolutely fine.